Martin Earl, the coordinator of the London group of Population Matters, and I'll be asking Kat Dixon, who is campaigner at Population Matters, about the relationship between population and climate change and what we can do about it. Population Matters is a UK-based charity working globally to achieve a better future for people and the planet. It supports human rights, women's empowerment and global justice, and it aims to increase awareness of overpopulation and unsustainable consumpment. So, Kat, welcome there. You're there, aren't you? Let me ask you a first basic question. I know all of us here understand that climate change is caused by global increases in consumption, caused by this consumption being produced by fossil fuels. Where's the population come into this?
Well, we think that there are many drivers of climate change, and population is a driver alongside consumption and all the other drivers, and so we think that they all need to be addressed. Basically, our impact on the planet is a result of our population as well as our affluence and our technology. Obviously, we know the numbers. We know we've grown from 1 billion since 1800, and we're at 7.8 billion now. And it's obviously projected to go up to 11 billion by the end of the century. We're not the only ones that are concerned about this issue. There's a number of leading scientists and research groups around the world that have echoed concerns about population as well as consumption. So we had in 2018, for example, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change reported that population growth was a key impediment to achieving our target of 1.5 degrees Celsius. And there's also a world-leading study called Project Drawdown, which analysed a whole variety of climate change solutions, and they did know that population interacts with consumption and production, and it does actually matter how many of us in the future are going to be consuming. But very simply, it is every additional person on the planet does have a carbon footprint. So the slowing down of population growth, the effect of that is more long term. It will be reducing our
monetize this.
Pardon?
Sorry,
I think somebody just chimed in. Yeah, it will be affecting our future cumulative emissions, but it's something that, like everything else, we need to get started on now to reduce our emissions tomorrow, basically.
Okay, well, thank you for that. So,
I'm in a
I think everyone
worldwide
knows the
seminar.
population has been rising, is going to rise very rapidly. But for many people, they see that as perhaps inevitable. We can't do anything about it. So, are we saying that we can do something about it? What can we do about this population increase?
Yeah, we're all about positive, ethical, empowering solutions. The solutions are all interlinked and mutually reinforcing, and actually many of them are already embedded within the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So we have 5 main solutions that we think will help tackle our population growth ethically and positively. The first one is to provide universal access to quality education for all worldwide, but that's specifically or especially important for women and girls, and that's because the evidence shows that women and girls that stay in education longer go on to have fewer children. But unfortunately, in places like Sub-Saharan Africa, just as an example, the number of girls that are not in secondary school has actually gone up by 7 million since 2007, just because of population growth. I know the BBC has been doing a really great radio series at the moment called 39 Ways to Save the Planet, and they also did an episode recently which looked at education of women and girls and the benefits that would have for the planet. So that's the first solution, and it is covered in the SDGs. Just going on to the second solution, it's also about ensuring universal access and uptake of modern family planning methods. This is very important It's vital and it's a human right, and the barriers to accessing modern sexual and reproductive healthcare need to be removed. At the moment, we've got an estimated high of about 270 million women and girls around the world that don't have access to modern contraception or unmet needs, and this has actually gone up by about 40 million since 1990, and again that's because of population growth. This healthcare that is also suffers from funding shortfalls, and obviously the pandemic has not helped either. So we do actually have a petition on our website at the moment just calling for increased funding of that at the moment. So both of those solutions are interlinked, and they lead on to our next solution, which again is covered in the SDGs, which is basically women's empowerment. So when we ensure universal education access, and when we ensure modern family planning, career opportunities, economic opportunities, and we also end harmful practices like child marriage, it works towards women's empowerment, which is vital, because again, when women and girls stay in education longer, then they go on to have smaller families. But equally, women that have smaller families are able to continue furthering their education, and they're able to take advantage of career and economic opportunities. These three solutions in particular, leading to women's empowerment, were actually looked at by Project Drawdown. They looked specifically, and they found, when they were analysing over 80 solutions, they found that the combination of equal access to education, especially for women and girls, and modern healthcare, including family planning, would actually save 85 gigatons of emissions by 2050. Combined, it would be the second best solution for limiting warming to 2 degrees, and the fifth most effective solution for limiting warming to 1.5 degrees. And they actually found that this would be more effective than some of the more popular technological solutions, such as offshore, wind, solar, and electric cars. So those two, leading to women's empowerment, particularly important. Moving on then to the fourth solution.
Katrina, I know I'm going to be a Gary here and come in. I know we haven't got much time left.
Yeah.
Can you just mention the other two very briefly?
Yes, very quickly. The other two, they're also interlinked, and they move on from that, and it's about ending poverty and reducing inequality. So all of those things, the education, the healthcare, the economic opportunities, it all helps to lift people and communities out of poverty, which helps to lower fertility rates, and vice versa, basically. So these are all human rights, and they're all positive and ethical solutions that we think enable women to make their own choices, and also it helps.
Can I ask you both a question? Do you mind
quickly?
Sit in there. The fifth solution is mostly for those of us in the global north, where some of these other solutions may already be in place, and where we also have the power to choose about what we want to do regarding family size, and it is to try, or to consider choosing smaller families at replacement level, which is
Thank you.
Well done to you both. You got all five solutions in there.
Gary, I want to come back here because I want your COP26 answer. Fine, 1 minute, okay?
Go for it.
So I want to just recap there. What Kat said is population is increasing rapidly, another 40% by the end of the century. But it's not a fixed given. And there are some wonderful things that we can do, really good things that we'd all want to do, which is mentioned, which is better education for girls, access to contraception, empowerment of women, ending poverty and inequality, and enabling people to choose smaller families. So what can you do individually to help on that? We want you to talk about it. So when you're talking about climate change, make sure you talk about population and these solutions. Go to our website, Population Matters, Google it, see the arguments, sign up, and get our free monthly newsletter. support all those good policies just mentioned, and crucially, we want to get our governments to incorporate these solutions into a part of COP26, along with everything else that they're doing. These are win-win
Martin,
solutions.
I see your passion. I see both your passions, but do you know what moves people is human stories. So I'm going to ask you both a question. What is the work that you're, one piece of work you're most proud of? Because these are the things that draw people to action. And it's about taking action, and it's being about human. So Martin, you can go first or second, it's your call. What is the one piece of work you've done that you're really proud of?
Well, in particular relation to climate change and population, it is in setting up the London group, which is a voluntary group. I'm a volunteer. We've got an excellent group of volunteers who are doing so many good things, putting on so many meetings. We've got meetings. Come to our website. Email me at London Group of PopulationMatters.org and find out. Yeah, that's my thing.
Katrina.
Me, the thing I'm most proud of, well, we run a crowdfunding scheme called Empower to Plan, which helps raise funds for grassroots groups across the world that are actually putting in place practical solutions that help communities and women and girls. We have so many personal stories from some of these partner groups that we've helped fund their projects for. And they're really making a difference. And you can find out about that project on our website.
Both of you are wonderful human beings. You're helping people you will never meet. You will never meet the people you help. And I really have to acknowledge you for that and taking up your time and preparing for this talk. Thank you. I hope people do take action. I do hope people do get in touch with you. But hold on to your horses. Hold on to your hat. The next speaker... Charles, where did you get this title from? It says, How We Can Avoid Disaster.
Well,
that sets you back. So the next two speakers, if you want to come on, and I'd just like to introduce you to Kat and Martin. I like this handover thing. It's really lovely that we're meeting new people. So I'm going to share my screen. Look, this is the next talk, 2:15 to 2:30. How can we avoid disaster? Wow. Okay, so Charles.
Can you bring in Ilan?
They're already here. All they need to do is turn their camera on. That's all they need to do.
So Ilan, you need to turn your camera on apparently, and your microphone. Can we hear you?
Ilan, I'm not a co-host. All right, let's make you a co-host. All right. Oh, don't fill the air, please. This is a smooth transition.
I was listening to Antonio Guterres on Monday at a round-table UN discussion. He made the point that there's about almost 100 million people in the global south who don't have access to any electricity. So not that sort of reducing our use of it, we've got to actually bring electricity power to these people. That's another part of the problem, I would say. It's a part of the just transition. So part of the just transition, how we do that.
Absolutely, Martin. Very part of the just transmission. So, Ilan, if you can put your microphone and your camera on.
Professor.
Yes, I'm here, but the host has not allowed me to control my camera, so you please need to change those permissions.
I'm sorry, Professor. And you deserve that title. You work for it. Why not?
There we go. Thank you so much. Brilliant work, Gary and Charles. Thank you.
Okay, so Ilan, thank you so much for joining us. So everybody, very, very big welcome to Ilan Kelman, who is a professor at UCL. So I think the best thing, Ilan, is if you tell us what you're a professor of.
We'll just say bye-bye, and it was a smoothish transition. A big topic for 15 minutes. Please come back again. Let's do this again and give you more time. Thank you both very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Katrina. Sorry, Ilan. Yeah, if you'd like to say a little bit about your work at UCL and what you're a professor of.
Absolutely. So my title is Professor of Disasters and Health, and at University College London, I'm half in the Institute for Risk and Disaster Reduction, half in the Institute for Global Health, with a wonderful, exciting mandate to link disasters and health, one link of which is absolutely climate change and wider development matters.
Super. And you've also written a book. So Gary asked about the question of titles, of why we're calling it a disaster. You've also written a book about disasters. So would you like to tell us a little bit about that, Ilan?
Yes, I mean, obviously, we love speaking about our work. The challenge, of course, is that it's sort of encouraging consumerism, because I will say, yes, my book is about disaster by choice, go for it. But then this is sort of telling people, well, then it's about ebooks or paper copies. But we do hope it inspires, and we hope it changes. And the point is that disasters are not caused by weather. They're not caused by earthquakes. Those are simply very typical environmental processes. The disaster is caused by people forced into situations where they can't deal with weather, or they can't deal with the earthquake. And it's how they live, it's where they live, it's what resources they have, it's what resources they don't have. And so people are making choices which remove resources and options from others, which means, unfortunately, no disaster is natural. Disasters come from human choices, so disaster by choice.
Wow, okay, well that's a massively powerful message. So we're just following the discussion by Martin and Katrina talking about population. So where would you see, in terms of this situation of climate and disasters, where would you see yourself, population fitting into this, Ilan?
Well, they hit it, that population has to be considered, but it's not the only factor. And their solutions are absolutely appropriate, that if we focus on the fundamentals, and if we say, look, everyone, men, women, girls, boys, have the right to education, have the right to reproductive choices, have the right to determine who they're partnering with and the size of their families, then that gives people those choices in order to avoid disaster by choice. Because the first statement which they said, which they back up by science and is absolutely right, is fundamentally climate change and many of the other ills which we have in society come from consumption. So it's up to all of us to reduce our consumption, and population numbers are part of that, but those numbers do not and cannot give the entire story.
Okay, well, we're some way into this discussion, aren't we, Gary? We've had a number of speakers here today so far, and you're the first one to mention consumption. Right, so let's then link this to our subject, which is what do we want from COP26? So I said earlier that what I want is I want 1.5 degrees. Now, let's ask the question of yourself, Ilan. What would you really want from world leaders at COP26, and would consumption be one of those big headline items that you want from them, something to do with reducing consumption?
Yes, absolutely. And again, that word consumption came from the earlier session, population matters. And a lot of it really comes down to recognizing how far basic goods travel, even how far food travels to get to our supermarket shelves, what we do every day, again, whether it's buying books or what choices we make, and really trying to consider entire life cycles, where a product or service starts and where it ends, and all the resources, energy, water aspects which go into that in order to look for an overall reduction in that. What I would also like to see from world leaders at COP26 is to take this life cycle approach, which really means do not isolate climate change.
Status.
We've done so much where climate change is sort of put in its own box or its own silo, which really neglects these wider issues like the right to education, like the right to reproductive choices. And so it's so important for me that leaders, scientific, business, nonprofit, and of course politicians come out and say, you know what, climate change sits within these wider contexts. We shouldn't neglect others just because we're going to highlight climate change.
So one of the big changes that happened in 2020, I think, was the prominence given to nature. And so the world leaders pledged for nature, that highlighted the link between climate, biodiversity, destroying habitats. So that clearly would be one of the big link items. So you've highlighted education and reproductive choices. Is there, in terms of the life cycle approach, these wider issues, are there any other wider issues that you'd like to put on the table at this stage?
All of us use different words and they mean different things to different people. So we certainly talk about development. We talk about sustainability. Again, because I'm half in a health institute, we talk about health, global health, planetary health. For me, the key is action. And I'm really happy with any of these words, but if people object to them and fully understandable, I'm happy to avoid them. The point and the fundamental aspect is do not separate climate change. When we talk about adapting to climate change, that's actually no different than reducing the risk from disasters. Everything is the same. When we talk about reducing greenhouse gas emissions and increasing their uptake, that actually falls directly within pollution prevention, because greenhouse gases meet the definition of pollutants. So I think we need to come together. Rather than having the Sustainable Development Goals separate from the Climate Change Agreement, separate from the Voluntary Disaster Agreement, why do we have 3 different tracks, and then there's a development financing track and there's a humanitarian track? Why are we separating, having different meetings, different agencies, different vocabulary? My key for COP26, my key for the fundament that you asked, Charles, is let's come together and do everything together simultaneously.
Well, a holistic approach is always going to be better when you look at the big picture. The question I have for you, in the UK, our health minister said that it's a bit of a challenge because human beings don't worry and concern themselves with long-term things. They concern themselves with short-term things. And maybe a week later, it said that there was evidence for an unborn child having carbon emissions go into the mother's lungs and damage that child. And people saw that as immediate. When you're very wise and you were very well read, what are people's, the general public's concerns when they come to you? The average person in the street, when they come to you and they say that this is really bothering me. And do you think that they're prioritizing, they're mixing up urgent and important?
No, I completely disagree with the minister's statement.
Oh, good. I'm pleased
when
about it.
people come and have concerns, their primary concern is their children. And then if they're of that age or generation, it's grandchildren or great-grandchildren. This statement that, I just care about what's on my social media this minute, I just care about what I'm eating tomorrow, is not how people think. I mean, the number of parents who sacrifice themselves for their children, who will move continent in order to give their children and grandchildren better opportunities, it is fundamental human nature to think about the next generation, which means we're thinking decades in the future.
If this was going to be on the news tonight, that would be one of the sound bites. That's really, really profound and beautiful, because I think long term, I don't think short term, and I think that this is one of our challenges. Thank you for, maybe we'll send that, your answer, to the minister in charge. Now, some of the...
That's the question I've got to ask.
Oh, you must squeeze it in, because we've only got 4 minutes. Go for it, Charles. And then we'll ask if you had a wish. If you had the magic lamp and you could rub it, what would you get? So over to you, Charles. Ask the question and we'll ask about the genie in the bottle.
You've hooked me here. We've got all these separate initiatives on climate, nature, all these sorts of things. Another load of stuff was brought together in the sort of Planet 2.0 type of thing. And what's the sort of phrase that we should be using to bring all of these things together? What sort of options have we got? What do you like to describe bringing all of these together into one holistic thing that needs tackling?
For me, it's not one size fits all, because people respond differently. And we're obviously speaking in English, even though it's around the world, and there are different Englishes, but there are many other languages. So I think we have to understand what people are looking for and respond to that. To me, personally, it's about humanity on the planet. That may not mean anything to others, or maybe it will. Maybe we can't translate it, maybe we can. So to me, it's about sitting down, exactly actually as Gary said, stop people in the street and talk to them at this point, 2 to 3 meters distance, please, or at least remotely, and really say to people, well, what concerns you? What does it mean to you? And then use that to understand how to communicate the same actions in different ways.
Wow. Okay.
Well,
Aaron, back over to you.
Well, no. Before you leave, I'm gonna hand you a pretend genie's bottle, lamp, a genie's lamp, and you're gonna rub it, and there's gonna be a guy, a lady, or an image that comes out and says, "I wish you 3 wishes, anything you like." Up to you, and they can be not just. Because I get the feeling you've reached self-actualization. Like you're really smart, and you look at a bigger picture. So I'm going to let you go out of not just global. 3 wishes just for you.
I will go for 1 wish given the time, and that's that we come together and join forces. It is ridiculous the level of conflict that we see, whether it's amongst academics and journals and nonprofits or even at the COPs. And they say that the battles are so vicious precisely because the stakes are so small. We have to overcome that because the stakes are huge. They couldn't be bigger. It's about us and our planet. So my wish is that people will come together, recognizing we are one species on one planet. We've made a complete mess of it, but we have all the knowledge, all the technology, all the approaches, all the understandings, all the wisdom to do so much better together for everyone.
I have a burning question. What made you specialize in disaster and health?
Because to me, they bring together so many issues like climate change, but not just climate change, many other ones. It's about equity. It's about ending oppression. It's about ensuring we have justice, again, other sort of keywords. But ultimately, it's about trying to make a positive difference in a constructive way while learning, exchanging, and on occasion actually teaching.
For a smooth transition, we finished, but I think everybody, I want to wish you, thank you on behalf of everybody for coming on and really looking at things at a different angle, that holistic approach. Thank you. I've very much enjoyed the time that you spent with us, and please come back again. Charles?
And thank you so much for your work and for the opportunity you give the world.
Well, thank you so much. Amazing, Ian. I mean, Ilan, I totally support the coming together. I also think that we should be coming together as countries. And so there's a big opportunity with the US and China at COP26, and people as individuals working together, working as neighbours, people working together on this massive project of yours, which is humanity for the planet.
Charles, look at this ecosystem you created. It's beautiful. James, just like a Swiss clock, you come in at 2:31. There you go. Over to you, sir. Introduce yourself. Tell us who you are.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you for the opportunity to be here, and actually for the opportunity to follow Ilan, who does a wonderful setup on
amazing.
Humanity and bringing humanity together. And effectively, I sit here representing an organisation called Citizens Climate Lobby, and a lot of the core work we do is bringing people together to talk about solutions and then take those discussions directly to the politicians. So I'm really grateful for the chance.
Well, Stephan should be joining us. Let me bring him in, and over to you. Sorry to interrupt. Stephan, if you're here, please join us. Thank you.
Yeah, hi.
You're chairing it. I hand over to you, sir.
Hi, Stephan. Nice to see you again.
Yes.
So I'm just going to... do you have a question, or am I good to go at this point?
I want to suggest, guys, is if you just introduce yourselves, and obviously we want everyone to focus on the question of what do we want from COP26. So, Stephan, do you want to go first to introduce?
Yes, so I'm Stephan Savarese, president of Saving Our Planet, the NGO where and zero CO2, and so it's a great pleasure to welcome James here, because we work together on the climate income and the European initiative that Citizens Climate Lobby has set up in Europe, and James will be able to tell you more about this.
So James, we met on a call. We met on a Citizens Climate Lobby call. I went all the way down to Swindon for their Saturday meeting a year or so ago. So really, really pleased to have you on here today, telling everyone the latest. And I think given where we are in the world with climate, I think we're really all excited now, not only to hear about your proposals, but we really want to know